Phil Healy is on the back of the Irish Independent this morning. That is her making her way through at the European Championships. She's going to bid for a place in the 100-metre final at the semi-final this evening, and that's in Berlin. She says there's more there. 200 grand bid for 16-year-old stopper, but only after leaving cert. This is the Rovers goalkeeper, Gavin Bazunu, who is apparently on the verge of a move to Spurs, but he's going to have to sit his leaving cert first. And Kerry chairman adamant they can't rush the appointment of Fitzmaurice's successor. Tim Murphy, the Kerry GAA chairman, has said that this is the biggest decision of his career and will ultimately mark his legacy down. Who follows Eamon Fitzmaurice in the hot seat? Tim Murphy was being mentioned as a possibility, the former goalkeeper, on Terrace Talk last night. What are your little sparrows telling you?
Well, Diarmuid Murphy will be a good appointment. It's very hard to tell with any of these appointments who will be good and who will be bad, because the only person in the mix who's really been at the top level of management at underage level in the county and who's in the mix are Jack O'Connor and Peter Keane. Now, with the Peter Keane appointment, you've obviously got to wait till Kerry's minor campaign plays out. Obviously, Jack O'Connor's had a couple of weeks to mull over the under-20 campaign. And in a way, the fact that Jack O'Connor took over the under-20s and stayed on with them this year has almost damaged his case, because if Kerry fans are upset with the way Eamon Fitzmaurice got some decisions wrong over the last couple of years, well, you can imagine what those same fans were saying when they got cleaned out of midfield against Galway in the under-21 semi-final last year and continued to kick the ball long, and the way they got bullied around the park by Kildare in this year's All-Ireland semi-final. Now, the thing is, Jack O'Connor... They're
All-Ireland champions, though, like one of the greatest under-20 teams we've ever seen.
Well, you know, they're...
literally the greatest under-20 team that there's ever been.
Well, that is a good point, and one of the great players you would suspect in Jimmy Hyland. But there is a point, and you know, it comes back to Fitzmaurice as well, that you know, O'Connor cruised through earlier parts of the championship over the last couple of years, took a great minor team and solidified their place as an up-and-coming team, a generation of potential superstars. And he won't get the credit because he got things wrong in 2 All-Ireland semi-finals. And if he wasn't in those positions, he might be the front runner for the job. Now, Peter Keane seems to be the man who's best placed within that dynamic of managing underage teams. The other talk over the last couple of days has been Pat O'Shea potentially being reinstated as Kerry manager, which would really split opinion in the county. But he's certainly done a great job with Dr. Crokes, bringing them to the promised land once again. Last year, of course, this year was quite disappointing against Nemo Rangers and all that. So there's a number of different ones, but it seems that Tomás O'Shea and former Kerry players are going to give the support to the likes of Diarmuid O'Sullivan, former teammates of theirs, rather than Diarmuid Murphy, sorry, rather than the likes of a Jack O'Connor or a Pat O'Shea or a Peter Keane,
who they all played under, which is interesting.
Well, not Peter Keane, but yeah.
Tyrone building up formidable head of steam is the headline on Jim McGuinness' piece today. He's asking the question: they've no marquee forward, they've no marquee free taker. Can they win All Ireland? He has his doubts. No doubt that'll be pinned on the dressing room and dressing room wall. And is it? What's their training centre called? Garvaghey. Mannion happy to keep clocking up the miles for Galway. This is Pádraig Mannion. It's just that Galway performance, really. Like, there's a zombie quality to that in an All-Ireland semi-final that the great Kilkenny team had, that you don't give any credit to until after they win the All-Ireland. You go, oh, okay, that's when they won the All-Ireland. You know, I'd be worried if I was Limerick. Like, how do you kill that team? You can't kill that team.
The zombie-like quality was there in the first day to a certain extent against Clare, maybe in the game against Kilkenny the second day in the replay in Thurles. But to say it was there on Sunday, like, come on, it was Clare pucking that game away. There's no two ways about it. There is a flaw in this Galway team that they keep letting early leads slip. It's not a flaw in their character, Joe Canning. It's a flaw maybe in great teams, allowing great teams to come back into games because you're coming up against great teams. It is a great hurling championship. I don't know where this idea of this criticism of Galway's character was, but there is like cold hard evidence in front of us that shows us that Galway have let 3 big leads slip early in games, and it is because they go gung-ho early in games, teams figure them out, then it's up to the Galway management to figure them out, and they've done so successfully over the last few games, except for the fact that on Sunday the single biggest factor in Clare's defeat was their accuracy. There's no getting away from that. Of course there's a zombie-like nature to Galway, but to say that the zombie-like nature was the reason why they won on Sunday just isn't true.
Andy McEntee says the Super 8s are not fair. Of course, Andy McEntee's Meath were a point up against Tyrone and all they had to do was tactically foul. He's basically saying, would the Dubs have done what we did, or would the Dubs have just wrestled everybody to the ground? That's a Dublin team, by the way, who have 15 men behind the ball quite regularly and who are not a team of swashbucklers. It's a wide-ranging interview that he's done with LMFM, and he says the Super 8s aren't fair. They've played 2 games in the Championship. Tyrone have now played 8 or 9 since then, including that. And it's like, well, which of these 2 teams is progressing? Is it us who actually needs to progress, or is it Tyrone who, you know, are a Division 1 team and who had all the advantages down through the years? And it's completely right. Like, you see people kind of saying that the problem with the Super 8s is that it's not knockout from quarter-final stage on, which all great competitions are. And I mean, I like, the problem is that the whole structure makes absolutely no sense. The provincial championships are a complete anachronism, and having everybody able to take part in the Sam Maguire doesn't actually make sense. Like, I know everybody who plays in those teams, like Michael Quinlivan's in here saying, I want to play, even if it's only one game, I want my opportunity to play for Sam Maguire, and I understand that, but it doesn't make sense.
No, like, poor old me, they've got mentioned a couple of times over the course of the weekend. Like, Sean Kavanagh mentioned them in the Sunday game a couple of times, and they seem to be like the standard bearer now for this Tyrone team, as in Tyrone could go all the way, they could push Dublin close in an All-Ireland final, and Andy McEntee is looking around at his dressing room in the winter saying, well, listen, we came close to Tyrone, we came close to Dublin. It's one of these weird anomalies that we often see in the GAA summer, not on the level though of some of the results we saw in the Ulster Championship, like the Fermanagh win, and I know I've mentioned this tens of times, dozens of times on this show, but that Fermanagh win against Monaghan is one of the craziest things we've seen in sport. Like, how the hell did that happen? Still scratching my head. Monaghan gone on to be the story of the summer. 3 guaranteed All-Stars. They beat a team of 3 guaranteed All-Stars, and nobody knows really how they did it. It's so strange. Meath going close to Tyrone. Is it an anomaly? Well, we'll see what they do next year. But, you know, with the likes of Jimmy Hyland and those Lillywhites coming as well, there could be a Leinster Championship on offer in the next 5 years. Who would have thunk it?
Okay, so moving on, Poison Pen, the Irish Examiner front page. So just very briefly, Tommy Conlon. It's inevitable. Why are we waiting for Dublin coronation? Can anybody stop Dublin? In a word, no. He's basically agreeing with you that it's going to be the easiest All-Ireland win that Dublin have as they hit 5 or 6. So how county fanatics have crossed the line in GAA. This is the lead in the Examiner this morning. Just abuse from Owen, often most hurtful. This is Michael Moynihan's piece. Maybe Paulie wasn't all wrong back then.
Yeah.
The roughest type of fucking animals.
Yeah, well, like, it's very hard to make a case against what Paulie said in light of what's come out over the last couple of days. It's kind of the volume with which he talks about Fitzmaurice, that he does have, a basket full of anonymous letters, which is hard to hear about, to be honest. Like, just, I am always of the belief that it is a very vocal minority that kind of do this sort of thing, and ultimately the vocal minority is the thing that gets heard. Like, I do remember after the league game in Tralee against Galway earlier in the year, there was one fella who, at the end of the game, who kind of rushed to the front of the terrace where which is where dugouts are in Tralee, and called Eamon Fitzmaurice everything under the sun, saying, you're useless, you need to get out, you haven't a clue. And at that point, a good 7 or 8 Kerry fans kind of made their way to that fan and gave him a piece of their mind, saying, what are you doing? I mean, like, it's the league. Would you relax? Give the man a bit of time. What are you, like, how dare you say that sort of stuff? I don't want to repeat what this fella said, but in essence, the Kerry fans were saying to him, how dare you say to that man?
So they are policing it, in fairness to them.
Yes. Yeah. But ultimately, how do you police that? Like, I wouldn't be surprised if that particular individual was one of the people who was sending an anonymous letter to Eamon Fitzmaurice's house. Ultimately, there is a direct pathway to these people who are volunteers in the GAA, and that's something that people need to be really bloody careful of, because it's got an impact beyond the individual you're sending the letter to. Like imagine the impact that has on Eamon Fitzmaurice's family and stuff
grim.
Like that. It is grim.
Yeah, Anthony Daly is talking about when he was the Clare manager, there was similar stuff going on from the Clare fans. And you're like,
but in fairness to Dalo there, like, he was on an Examiner podcast that Michael Moynihan cites in his piece there. He says that, like, a fella from Mayo gave him a lot of abuse, and Dalo picked up the phone and said, if you ever send me a letter again, I'll sort you out, because it was particularly personal abuse. But Dalo also points out that there was a fellow who used to call him and give out to him, but it was about what he did on the pitch. It wasn't personal, he disagreed with what he did. And Dalo would give him the time of day, and you get the sense that Fitzmaurice is that type of person as well. Very reasonable man, very easy to deal with. Everybody in the media would say that he does listen to what people think. He is receptive to other ideas that people might have had. It's just the personalised stuff, which I can only imagine would have been carried in those anonymous letters, which is the real burden here.
One last quick one for me, the Racing Post. Latrobe could face Winks after big York assignment, so possibility that Winks could meet the Irish Derby hero at Mooney Valley in October after Latrobe was yesterday entered for the Cox Plate, and the Joseph O'Brien trained colt has an equally tasty target at York, so it's a bit away. Oh, sorry, one more from me. The Irish News back page of this is Tyrone subs Super Hart. So Mickey Hart acknowledging that the strength and depth of the two sides was the difference at the weekend as they streaked home on that one. So,
just before we get on to the Irish Daily Mail, breaking news this morning about Arsenal's Stan Kroenke has made an offer to buy all of the club. So he's a majority shareholder, 67% of Arsenal he owns at the moment. Alisher Usmanov, the Russian billionaire, owns the rest of the club. But Usmanov has agreed to sell his 30% stake in the club. The buyout announcement was made to the London Stock Exchange just this morning. So that'll bring the valuation of the club to £1.8 billion, which is $2.3 billion, which is at the current valuation. We're just looking at the Forbes list this morning, the latest valuation of Arsenal on the richest clubs in the world list, which leaves them at 6th, just behind Manchester City. So their valuation wouldn't change too much, if anything, really. So no big impact on that element of things. It's just about what Kroenke's plans are. There's been varying kind of viewpoints from Arsenal fans, just looking on Twitter this morning.
Yeah, so there's an outspoken critic of Kroenke and the Kroenke regime saying this is a disaster for Arsenal fans. Just explain what that point was there.
Like Tim Payton, who a lot of people will be familiar with on Twitter, just one of the points that, like on a very elementary basis, that he pointed out this morning was that Kroenke kind of embodies the businessman who's looking for a profit in sports, which is often a brush which is used to tar American sports, where it's like billionaire owner of NFL or NBA team looks to get even richer via their sports team, looks to use their sports team as a vehicle. And I don't think we kind of appreciate this. The way the finances and the revenues have gone in the Premier League, that is actually a realistic potential now in the Premier League. And just because Stan Kroenke potentially sees profitability in Arsenal Football Club doesn't mean that he doesn't have the best interests of Arsenal Football Club at heart. Of course, it is a little bit unique to see a man who potentially might be open to admitting that, listen, I want to increase my own personal finances here via Arsenal Football Club as a vehicle. But ultimately, he will need Arsenal to succeed for that to happen. So it's kind of a win-win-win for me, the way I see it. And I don't know, like they've tapped into a huge market in the US already. Is there more to be tapped into there with his own connections? I'm not so sure. I'm not sure what he can do on that level. But ultimately, not having two big billionaires fighting for the power and the financial control of this football club is, and I realise I said the word football club as many times as Kenny Cunningham in the last couple of minutes, is probably a good thing. Not having a tug of war over who runs the show can only be a positive thing. Try it out for a while. Have one powerful man running the show at Arsenal. They've tried many things in the past and they failed.
It's always interesting, I think, to look at what the American owners do with their American teams. And kind of see there's a pattern of behaviour there. Like, you know, you look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and what the Glazers did there, and you look at what they did with Man United. They definitely take stuff from one market and move it to the other. Kroenke took the St. Louis Rams and moved them to LA. So if you're from St. Louis and you're a Rams fan, then you think he's an absolute scumbag because he's moved your team away from the city. If you are an LA Rams fan, you think he's an absolute legend because he's brought the club to LA and he has absolutely splashed the cash. They're going to have this amazing new stadium built there, and he's done a sweetheart deal, and ultimately he did end up having to put up a lot of his own money, but the value of owning the biggest and best team in LA, as they will be, is going to be huge. So he has completely enriched himself, but he's done that by signing the best players, by getting the best young coach, by making them one of the most exciting teams to watch. Like with the ownership, and that's in one season they've managed to turn that around. So I would suspect that while he may also want to make money from Arsenal, he's not going to do that by playing crappy football and having a half-empty stadium. Do the Man City fans ultimately care about the origins of the money that has made Manchester City able to afford Pep Guardiola? Ultimately, football fans are unbelievably fickle when it comes to this stuff. A small coterie of Manchester United fans hived away from Manchester United when the Glazers came in and set up FC United, and they still go there and that club still exists, and I completely understand their adherence to grassroots football and why they did that. But ultimately, most Manchester United fans will remember the Glazers for putting together the team that had Rooney and Ronaldo and Rio Ferdinand and Alex Ferguson never once giving out about the Glazers, never once publicly going against the Glazers. And, you know, they're like, well, if it was good enough for Ferguson, it was good enough for them. The Glazers took out hundreds of millions from Manchester United over the time that they've been the owners of the club. So football fans ultimately, I suspect, don't care about this stuff if the team is performing well and if it's the players' wages are paid.
That's it. Like, from a purely franchise point of view, the current iteration of the Rams is their best iteration since the Miracle on Turf. Like, he's made them the most successful that any young St. Louis fans will ever remember, and any of the new Los Angeles fans will remember for quite some time. If that happens with Arsenal, then Arsenal fans are not going to be complaining, no question. Back page of the Irish Daily Mail this morning is "You cowards, Kerry Supremo blasts faceless hate mail trolls." That's Tim Murphy. He's speaking to Micheál Clifford here on the back page of the Irish Daily Mail, hitting out at some of these faceless critics, as I say, a cohort of faceless people, he calls them, sending hate mail to the likes of Eamon Fitzmaurice. You've also got "All hail the homecoming heroes." That's James Murray's story there, as Ireland's hockey team take to the stage on Dame Street yesterday. The back page of the Herald this morning focuses on the Dubs' double threat. Costello and Flynn pushing for a semi-start, says Dubs legend Duff. That is, Cormac Costello, Paul Flynn, both brilliant, of course, at the weekend. Kieran Duff speaking to Frank Roach here on the back page of the Irish Daily Mail this morning. The back page of the Mirror then focuses on transfer news. £40 million, Toby or not Toby? United make bid for £40 million. Toby or not Toby is how I meant to phrase that. United make bid for Spurs ace but won't break bank. £40 million, that seems like a fairly low ceiling for Toby Alderweireld, given transfer deadline day is Thursday. You're pushing that to 50 or 60 if you want to get him before then, I reckon.
There's a clause in the contract. Apparently the Christmas transfer window is going to be 26 million.
That'd be a disaster from a Spurs point of view.
That's why they'll take 40 now.
Yeah, considering the way Daniel Levy operates, considering the way the club has always operated, it is, I don't want to call them a selling club, but they like to make a bit of a profit.
Yeah.
So that would be a disaster to let them go for £26 million. So 40 might actually swing at them with that information. I think they might be able to swindle 50 out of them, though, before the end of the week. Blues put in, Chelsea chasing €28 million Jack to replace Courtois. So they're going after Jack Butland, Thibaut Courtois on the way back to Madrid, if you're to believe reports. He's gone AWOL from the Chelsea training ground. He was obviously back late from the World Cup. Belgium got to the third place playoff, so he was there till the very last weekend. But he should be back by now, and he's not. He's got two kids over in Madrid. Real Madrid are interested. The thing is, like, Chelsea have to make a decision on this week. The La Liga transfer window doesn't close till another 3 weeks after the Premier League window closes, so it's a bit of a disaster if we get to the end of the week, Chelsea haven't signed a replacement, and then 1 week later Real Madrid has snapped up Thibaut Courtois. Rob Green suddenly becomes your second choice keeper. Back page of the Sun is Rebel agent in talks over Pogba move, revolt, Toon Stars strike over bonus row, and mutiny. AWOL Courtois tries to force move. It has been like a rather exhilarating couple of weeks in sort of the behind the scenes element of the Premier League, because it's all been squashed into a 2 or 3 week period given the transfer window closes on Thursday. And it's always great to have Mike Ashley around. If you're stuck for a story, just stick him up in like a sparkling white shirt on the back of your tabloid newspaper, and he'll be there to give you some sort of story. Apparently Newcastle players have boycotted a club shoot. Now, this is the shoot where you walk up to the Sky Sports camera in a fancy manner and, I don't know, fold your arms, or you dab, or you do a Fortnite celebration. And they've really shown Mike Ashley who's boss by not dabbing for the Sky Sports cameras. So
Sky Sports and BT, so they didn't do it for either of them.
Oh, BT have got those animations this year as well.
They do, yeah.
I thought Sky Sports would have some sort of creative control and all of that. Some UK back pages. There's a great interview here this morning with Carl Akime, the Wolves goalkeeper. So some people have a cancer that is terminal. I was given a chance, and I'm grateful to have that. Stuart James interview on page 40 there this morning. It's online if you want to check that out. Courtois snubs Sarri Summit in bid to force Madrid move. Keeper plays hardball. That's a Thibaut Courtois story. It seems to be the transfer story at the moment. Can we bring you the Telegraph this morning? Here we go. It is second footballer killed by head trauma. It's another devastating story from the fallout, really, and kind of an area of science that we are only really starting to fully understand when it comes to heading the ball, and footballers with the legacy of heading the ball and the trauma that causes. So tragic news there, and a big countdown to the Premier League season. It continues everywhere. It starts on Friday.